you know what, from the moment I asked if you could do it on this Sunday, and it all lined up, and then I messaged Dave and said, can you do a podcast Sunday? And he's like, yeah, I can. I've been bricking it the whole time.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, I guess there was a part of me that hoped you'd be like, no, I can't do it. And we go, well, I tried.
Yeah,
I didn't make it. But I'm glad to hear. Do you want a drink? I've got a fridge here.
No, I'm all right, actually.
I've got soda water. I've got a new tonic, a Red Bull, or a Monster if you're feeling aggressive.
I'll have a soda water,
Yeah?
actually. Yeah.
Okay, you are. You should be.
Usually only a Red Bull guy on a long trip. Thank you.
I'm going to have a new tonic.
Look at that.
Yeah. Have you tried this stuff before?
No, I haven't.
It's really cool. It's a drink that, well, they market it as a productivity drink for people with ADHD. Do you know James Smith and Chris Williamson?
Yes.
Do you know James Smith?
I don't know him personally.
But I'm on a business mentorship with him.
Okay.
And it's him and Chris Williamson that have come up with this drink. They both suffer with ADHD, but they have to be high functioning and productive. So it's amazing. So it's got a lot of caffeine in it, more caffeine than a Red Bull and a Monster does. But the other chemicals they have make the caffeine a slow release caffeine.
Yeah. So
you have a more kind of focused, calm energy rather than kind of full gas like a Red Bull and Monster does. So
exactly.
I really like it.
Oh, perfect.
And you know what? I actually feel a difference with it. In the afternoon when I'm like trying to do emails and stuff.
Yeah, you're feeling a bit sluggish.
Yeah, and you don't want a coffee sometimes, you don't want water, so it kind of works for me.
Yeah, as well on long trips you get to the point where you kind of have too much coffee, don't you? And
you
can't even understand the stuff.
And if it's warm as well, you don't always want a coffee. You want something cold and it tastes a bit good. Right, do you want to hear what ChatGPT says about you?
I would like to. Hopefully it's good.
Have you ever ChatGPT'd yourself?
Not myself, no.
All right, okay.
It's been a while since I Googled myself, to be fair, as well.
Yeah, well, Google's dead now.
Yeah.
I think ChatGPT will do to Google what Google did to the Yellow Pages. I think make it completely obsolete.
Yeah.
And if you remember Yellow Pages, because you're...
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Steve Holcombe, 9-time world champion, born 16th of May 1994 in Barnstaple.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Steve boasts a full head of hair, a beautiful girlfriend, and is never sick at sea.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, there we go. That's it. Yeah, a lot of truth there.
Yeah, exactly.
You're one of the main men. And I think I asked it for like a really short thing, and that's what it came out with. Yeah. I don't know where he got the sick at sea bit from, but I think it just shows you're a winner, doesn't it? Like you're one of the main men.
Yeah,
main men in
it.
Yeah, you are the main guy.
Yeah.
Not necessarily an enduro either. I think you're quite a captain kind of. You're a natural captain, aren't you? Like if you were in a boy band, you'd be one of the singers, wouldn't you? Not one of the guys spinning around in the back in a sequin jacket.
Don't have the best singing voice, but yeah, no.
It's just a story. Yeah. Have you been on podcast before?
No, never on a podcast. I've obviously done numerous interviews, but yeah, never been on a podcast like this. I think I might call in once to one of a friend's one a few years ago.
But that blows me away because you've got so much history within the sport. And enduro doesn't offer a podcast.
No.
Is there an enduro podcast?
No, there's not. It's something that I've, because it seems like the last 4 years podcasts have gone pretty mad, haven't they? And obviously they started way before that. But it's something much like the vlogging and stuff. It's something that many, many years ago I kind of wanted to get into, but I didn't feel I was kind of in the position in my career to do it. Whereas I guess as you get older and you kind of, it's another tool, isn't it? Another way to market yourself and stay relevant and stay in the loop and talk to interesting people, right? Because I'm a big fan of listening to podcasts in general, especially more kind of like around motocross, American motocross. There's quite a big podcast called Pulp MX. I'm an avid listener of that, and they're like 5-hour long shows, and you just they come out on a Monday evening, and you pretty much either do it on a long trip or listen to it in brief stints in the garage.
Yeah, it makes a long drive more enjoyable and more productive, doesn't it? Because I remember in school, I was so bad at school, always looking out the window. Like, if I went through school now, I would have my own teacher. Do you remember you have those kids had their own teacher with them? I'd be one of them. That's how much I hate it. Always looking out the window, did not want to be there. And they always claimed that, you can't concentrate, you can't do this. But a 3-hour podcast about nutrition, I am gripped every minute. Yeah. So it's just that I didn't care what that teacher was saying.
Yes.
Yeah, whereas the focus wasn't the problem. It's just I didn't care what the hell they were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. And I see, if I've got a really long drive now, I think, okay, what podcast am I going to listen to? That one's 4 hours, and I can listen to that one. Or if there's a couple of shorter ones, and I kind of really look forward to it.
Yeah.
And I think you told me before that you've never been on a podcast, but you've been on loads of interviews, and I can't kind of believe that. Why isn't there someone in enduro offering a podcast like that?
I don't know.
Maybe that's what you'll do.
Yeah. I know. Maybe Hard Enduro has one or two. I've seen some stuff on.
There's like the Gypsy Tales one that kind of goes.
Yeah, they do
into motocross and stuff.
Yeah, it does. But I don't. I guess whether enduro is not quite big enough, not quite the demographic, but I do think there are a lot of interesting stories, and myself, a lot of the foreign riders. It's kind of we've all come from different places of the world.
Yeah, you got your stories
in the same place, and we all race and do the same things. And like I say, there's a lot of interesting stories there. So hopefully, someone might do one.
Yeah, because they're different to interviews, aren't they? Yeah, maybe I'll be the main guy.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're different to interviews, aren't they? You kind of want to move your media training to the side.
Yeah.
And it's a bit more of a conversation, isn't it? And
yes.
That's kind of what I want to get out of you today. Some not just talking and your stories, but also some actionable steps that maybe a young athlete could take. Not just about how you feel and how you're going to feel then, or what you're expecting to feel, but actual things that maybe, if you had a racer who is, if we make someone up, so a 16-year-old boy who's got the talent, he's got the skill, his parents have got some money, because that does help.
Yes.
Because you look at these endurance events, what's an average price of a bike?
Oh, ridiculous!
10,000 probably, is it?
Yeah.
That's conservative.
To get a good standard of kind of like a race bike.
Yeah, if you're racing on a decent series, you've got a 10 grand bike, right? So you see that there's some money. I think it's sad to say, but it probably is essential these days.
Yeah. You don't have to have millionaire parents, but
no,
you've got to have that ability to have money to spend.
You have a bike, you have spares, you have a motorhome, you have the entry fees, you have the weekends. It's a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's not just 1 or 2 weekends a year. It's 10, 15, 20.
Yeah, Europe maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they have these young athletes. A 16-year-old boy, for example, he's got the speed, he's got the talent, he's got some money. I think some of them lack a little bit of professionalism, and you're the most professional guy in the sport. And that's what people tell me. I don't know you that well. We've known each other for less than a year. We spent a fair bit of time together, but that's what I heard about you. You're the most professional you'll ever be. I remember when we were flying to the 6 days last year, you had a long drive from you were at Newcastle the day before competing.
Yeah, racing in the evening,
And you had to be at the airport for, not stupid, but like 9 a.m. the next day. I said to Jamie, the team manager, are they going to be late? He goes, Steve won't be late.
Yeah.
And you weren't.
No.
So these young people, what can they do? And let's talk pre-race now, right? The night before or the morning before the race. What can they do to help themselves on that race day?
I mean, a lot of it comes down to, I think, what you can control. I think a lot of people get carried away with results and, kind of how other people are gonna ride. And ultimately, I think the best preparation is controlling what you can control. So especially before the race, it might start 2 or 3 days before, but it depends how deep you want to go into it really. But as long as you're hydrated, you've ate the right things, you've kind of not come into the race fatigued, you've done a little bit of training before that, and you're well rested, I think you're probably on the start line in a better place than 95% of the other
with
people
stress
racing.
levels a little bit lower than they normally might be.
No, exactly.
I completely agree. It's all about preparation, I think, because on my Instagram, there's 3 reels pinned to the top of my Instagram to demonstrate my biggest clients. You're one of them, Elvin Evans and Jordan Williams. And the 3 of you are some of the fastest people in your sport, and you are exactly the same people. And I don't know if that's God-given, and that's what's helped you elevate there, or it's something you've learned.
I think it's learned. Like, I was never the quickest guy growing up, and, there were always guys similar age, younger than me even, that were quicker than me. But I think a lot of it comes down to desire. A lot of people want the results, but a lot of people don't want to put in the effort to get the results.
And actually, I think some people, I don't know if they take pride is the word, but they like to compete and not try that hard.
Yeah.
And be that guy to go, well, I do well, and I don't even try. But I think there's an insecurity there. If they do try and they do badly, then they lose face.
Yeah, and I'd say that was a little bit of a challenge of mine from not kind of the early part of my career, but when I started to be quite successful, it got to the point, and I wouldn't say I was actively doing it, but subconsciously it was almost like you try and see how well you can do without putting in the work. And not necessarily not putting in the work, because I was still training, still riding, but when you keep winning and keep winning and keep winning, it's the motivation to win's not there really. You're kind of doing it because you don't want to lose. And then when you do lose, and and then when you do lose, you've got the excuse of, okay, I didn't train as hard as I should have, but certainly looking back, it was perhaps not the correct move, but I think that's definitely turned me into who I am today. And I'm not sitting here saying that I train the hardest or I ride the most or do the things, but I do what's correct for me. And I feel compared to the other guys, I've got an edge in my preparation, how I view kind of racing, and and certainly how I know my own limits. You know, I think a lot of riders out there, certainly in the professional level, but I think also in the amateur scene, don't know where their level is, you know, and that's why, okay, it's not great me sitting here with an injury, but I think that's why throughout my career I've managed to stay
That's a part of being a professional athlete. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I think that's why I've generally stayed pretty injury free and managed to win 9 world championships.
Yeah, 9. That's a fair amount, isn't it? Yeah. So Jordan Williams, for example, I don't know if you've ever met Jordan. Have you?
No, never met him.
No,
but obviously no.
He was junior world champion. Takes it very seriously when he has to, and when I first started training him, people would say, God, he's mad. He is. You should see, like, in his motorhome or whatever in the morning, his kit is laid out and folded. Yeah. Everything's exactly where it should be. Yeah. You know, and it's the same in enduro, right? You should have, the motorhome should be clean and tidy and fueled. Yeah. Your bike should be absolutely immaculate and ready to go. All your kit is laid out. Because you see some people turn up on race day, they're like running around everyone else's motorhomes. You've got a spare knee brace. Have you got a lens for an Oakley air brake? Have you got, you know, and then they get to the start line and they're flustered, and there's no way you can perform like that. No way.
Not at all. And I kind of like to, you know, certainly for like a Friday then in our race day, because we start on a Wednesday, walk all the special tests. So we do, you know, 30, 40 kilometers of walking throughout the whole week. So our races are pretty long before you even got on a bike. But like the whole Friday, that's literally spent, you know, preparing goggles. Even if it's not going to be a rainy weekend, you know, I've prepared goggles that are ready for the rain, and
then spares,
you know, those jackets, those, you know, kit. If we've got checkpoints that are out, you know, I always give them a bag of a jersey, undershirt, you know, just in case I crash, rip a jersey.
The controllables that you mentioned, right? Yeah, because like you said, there's things you can and you can't control. You can't control the weather. You can't control how someone else is going to compete. So you could have the best race of your life, but your direct competitors had the best race of their life and they pipped you. And that's fine. But if you did badly because 5 minutes before you have to go, you're looking for a knee brace, then that's on you.
No. And like I say, there's a sudden downpour and you haven't got the right pair of goggles, and you know, you're a few seconds behind or a few seconds ahead and lose that race because you know,
that's your fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's your fault. You know, I don't care if you moan about the weather. Sorry, that is your fault. Yeah, exactly. And you know, we met at the 6 Days last year, and can you just explain what the 6 Days is to people who don't know? Yeah,
so the 6 Days Enduro is effectively like the Olympics of enduro sport. So 6 days, names on the tin, it's 6 days worth of riding. The whole event is over 2 weeks, so you can walk the whole 6 to 7 days before the event. It's a team, so they do it in countries.
So not the factory teams.
No, exactly. So it's country based, so nationality based.
Is it the only race where you can compete for your country?
Yes. Yeah. So currently, rules have changed a little bit in the last few years, but now it's 4 senior riders in the trophy team. All 4 have to finish to score. So if you lose one, that's it. You know, like we did in Spain, lost.
Potman didn't even get off the start line.
Yeah, exactly. Lost Harry on the first day, so the team results effectively scrapped. But then they have a junior team with 3 riders and a female team of 3 riders.
So a normal race is 2 days and a bit, right? They compete on the Friday. A GP would be compete on the Friday night and then 2 full days. Yeah. So the 6 days it's not a multi-day event; it's a multi-day event. Yes. It's a multi-day event back to back. Yeah. So some people do it like yourself, looking for the win. Some people do it to represent their country and just compete, and then some people do it as a clubman, don't they? It's kind of something they wanted to tick off as an enduro rider. They want to go and they want to see if they can complete the 6 days of competition. So it's more of a festival atmosphere, isn't it? And it's cool, and and I really enjoyed it. And you really impressed me at the 6 days, because, like I say, I haven't met you before except for a couple of Zoom calls. Yeah, and you were ultimately focused and present and professional when you had to be, but then you were also really relaxed and didn't take yourself too seriously when you didn't have to be professional. Yeah. And I think it's really hard for people to have that switch. And I see how you are with the fans and the other members of the team, and you really try and bring everyone up around you. And it's I'm honoured to call you a mate. Yeah, I really am. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
I'd heard good things about you, and everything I saw from you on that trip was exactly that.
Yeah, and I think I get it quite a lot on Instagram, to be fair. A lot of people message me, not crazy stuff, but really random stuff, about bike setup, about even teams that I've ridden for in the past, and they've ridden for bikes and stuff. And I always try and kind of answer people. It's very rare I don't answer people on Instagram and stuff.
Because they're the fans, really, right? What else is there but the fans? Because Honda, your factory team, they want to sell bikes ultimately. You're employed to demonstrate what that bike can do. The fans are looking at you possibly buying a bike based on how you interact with them, maybe, right? They might go, oh, Steve was brilliant to my son on that trip. He had a photo with him and spent some time with him. I'm going to buy a Honda. Never, that's... And you're just an athlete in a pretty obscure sport. Some people get too big for their boots, and you wonder who the hell they think they are.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is, and everyone always says, oh, thank you for answering, no one ever answers me back. But yeah, okay, it's, most people sit on their phones at a decent time throughout the day scrolling on random things. They've obviously seen that they've got messages from people.
Yeah, look for your requests box and take a moment just
to... Yeah, it doesn't take 15 seconds to reply to a message, and, I'm not too big to reply to a question or answer someone, and, if that helps them, then, it makes you feel a little bit better.
Everyone wins,
well.
right?
Yeah, exactly. But
there's a quote, a rising tide lifts all ships, and I really like that one.
Yeah.
That, if you're the rising tide, bring everyone up around you.
Yeah.
Have you got any favourite quotes?
I've got one tattooed on my back. Says, take pride in how far you've come and have faith in how far you can go.
Yeah.
That was quite an interesting story. That was a bookmark from... My mum got it for me ages ago, and that was kind of first tattoo when I was 18. And it's just, I forget I got it sometimes because it's on...
Yeah, I've got a tattoo on my side here. I remember when I was probably 20, I thought, do I want a tattoo or not? And I thought, I'll get something safe, something shit, on my side. Then it doesn't matter if I don't like it or not. And I never had one since. So, I'm glad I didn't get a Tasmania devil with boxing gloves on or something on your arm. Something stupid like that.
Live, laugh, love.
Live, laugh, love. Yeah. But my favourite quote I've ever heard, I only heard it about 3 years ago. It said, although a ship is safe in the harbour, that's not what ships are for.
Yeah. I
thought, I like that. And I think about that when... I have this moment, okay, Steve's in town, I want to spend some time with him. I know Shorebreak Sounds and now advertising, they want to do other people's podcast. And I saw that line up and I thought, I should stretch myself here, because you can get really comfortable and the comfort zone is the death of people, I think. And the longer you spend in your comfort zone, the smaller it gets. It starts to encroach in on you.
No, I do get that.
Yeah, so I really like that one. But you said as a young guy you were riding. Was there a moment or a day where you thought, I'm going to go for this? I think I can make something of myself here.
I wouldn't say a specific day. I would say, like I say, coming up, I was never the. I think it's quite interesting. We had a day yesterday with the ACU Academy, and there was quite a few questions brought up about that, and like reflecting on my earlier part of my career, and like I'd done everything at the right time for me. I was never the really young kid coming up. I was, always, like I say, behind the shadow of a couple of guys. And
I
would say, like, I managed to win a decent amount, even when I was really young, like a lot of motocross races. They went into enduro, won, but worked my way up through the classes. I never came in and bang until I raced the World Championship. But I would say there was quite a critical point when I was around 18, just left college. I did really enjoy school, but was never that great. Didn't pass a lot of my subjects in college.
I think it might be a boys thing. I think boys struggle to sit still.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, when you're good or have a vision of where you want to be as an athlete, that is the vision, and I never found anything in school, even sport. I'd done sport in college, but I was never able to choose motorcycles. So I had to do basketball. Not a natural basketballer.
I was a basketballer in my teens,
Yeah, and I did enjoy it, but it was not. I didn't have the same dedication to that as I did racing.
Well, no, you're white and under 6'7", so you're never going to really make something of it.
Exactly. But then equally, I wanted to be a pilot in the RAF. So
interesting.
I can remember going into the careers office in the local town, went in and had a chat, and the bloke in there literally said, "Go away for 3 years. This was 18, so come back when you're 21. If you still want to do it, apply then." I think it was more like a go out, see a bit of the world, come back, and if you want to do it, you can do it. And ironically, I signed my first professional contract when I was 21, so I'm quite glad he sent me down that route.
That was a fork in the road, wasn't it?
Yeah. But even quite late into getting to the point of being professional, I was racing European Championship in 2014. So I was 19, 20, doing really well in that. And I always remember we went to do my first Enduro GP at the end of 2014, the final round in France. That was just the weekend before was the final European in the Czech Republic, and I won it both days overall.
Nice.
So I was helped a little bit where...
Was that your first big win you described?
Yeah. So I won. I was leading my class, so the under 23 junior class, and I was sitting like third overall, I believe, for the championship. But that was the first kind of like overall big event I've won. It has helped a little bit because the juniors started first, and the track got pretty boggy and pretty rough, and every lap we came around they made the track a little bit wider, so we were just going in the fresh lines all the time. So yeah, I will admit that helped me a lot. But I can remember going to France the weekend after and thinking like, right, I'm the boy. I've just come off of winning this European Championship. I'm going to come in and shake things up.
Tear it up, yeah.
And I ended up going 9-9 in the junior class. I can't remember how far I was back, but I was like a long way back from the winners, and I was like, I don't have any idea how I'm ever going to be that fast. Turn around to 2015, changed manufacturers, tried to get a ride in the World Championship, but had to pay to do it, and we weren't in a position to kind of put that much money up front to get a ride. So fortunately managed to get a bike there, and I had to cover my travel costs, and flew to Italy. Couple of days on the bike, ended up going quite a bit quicker than the other team's riders during that little 2-day kind of ride, and then went to missed the first GP, because it was in Chile. Second GP went there and finished third and second, and the third GP ended up getting my first win and
building momentum.
Yeah,
because I think in sport, if momentum isn't with you, it's really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And some people, they're coming off a loss and they're doing something and they're underperforming, they feel, and then they try and force a result and it gets worse.
Yeah.
Building momentum, I'd say, in any sport is just the most important thing. Even if that means you don't have to win everything, you finish middle of the pack for a couple of times, and you just creep up a little bit, and then you creep up again, and then you build off that, and then you get a little bit stronger over the winter, and then you come back again. And I think a lot of people think it's all about this race and in this season,
Yeah.
And I was at your house a few months ago, trophies all over the wall, and even though when you look in, each individual trophy has a small story and a weekend attached to that, and you might even look at a trophy and not remember what that was from.
Yeah.
But at the time, that was maximum stress, travel,
exactly.
money, and now that's just a moment in the past. And people have to try and see the long-term approach to things, I think. And I think a lot of athletes struggle with that. They try and, right, this is my season.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help that a lot of these teams are offering, how are you going to perform under the cloud of a 1-year contract?
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? You have to pull something out of the bag.
And I think, and it's, my last 2 contracts have been 1-year contracts, and it's not the best situation to be in, but equally I'm in a different situation, I feel, compared to, an up-and-coming rider in that situation. And, fortunately I have, a lot of results recently and in the past that kind of back up my potential. Yeah,
you'll always have a ride, pretty much.
Yeah, which is, touch wood, which is good, but still, it's even someone like me, it's a 1-year contract isn't the nicest thing.
I think it shows no faith.
No,
unless it was part of your negotiation where you go, actually, next year I'm going to explore my options again.
And but that's definitely something I've noticed the last couple of years, how it kind of does affect not necessarily your kind of approach to a season, but I don't want to do what I've done this year, if I'm on a 1-year contract again next year. So, because then in the 2 short years that you would have had the security and you have 2 years of non-results, then that third year is where you're going to have the consequences. So, it does definitely change your approach a little bit.
Yeah, your knee injury this year, that sucked, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Because you came out of the gate flying, didn't you, at the start of the season?
Yeah.
I remember the day you bust it, you were hauling.
Yeah.
You were absolutely of course, hindsight, but you're probably going to win that weekend.
Yeah.
I remember I was doing something and I looked at my phone and I had a message from, I think, both Edmondson brothers. Jack was like, he'd messaged me a few times, like, Steve's flying. Have you seen? He's like on the first test. And then like 5 texts later, it's like, Steve is taking chunks out of people. Like, what is going on? Then I text you saying like, yeah, boy, go. Then you text me a picture back of a hospital wristband. Oh, no.
No, it's
and do you know over the years how many of those I get? Like, how was your weekend? Picture of someone in the sling. Fuck.
No, and I've been very fortunate not to really certainly have not a season-ending injury. I've picked up injuries in the past. I have 2 shoulder operations. Luckily, one of them was in the winter. I've only missed 1 race in my 10-year career. Like 1 World Championship race, and it just felt like this year. So last year, changing to Honda 254 stroke. Reason going on a 254 stroke in enduro GP, you have 3 different classes based on capacity of the bike. So E1's 250cc below, E2's above 250cc, so you have 354 strokes, you have 454 strokes. Then E3 is above 302 stroke and above 454 stroke. but then they're all bracketed in an Enduro GP class.
Okay.
So you can be on different bikes, different manufacturers, different capacities, but you're racing your class and the overall.
So do people... So what was the smallest engine class? E3?
250, E1.
Yeah, E1.
Yeah.
Are they at a disadvantage having a smaller engine? Or
Yes.
does it depend on the track that weekend?
No, yeah, you are, from a horsepower point of view. The tracks generally, recently the tracks have been pretty straightforward in terms of like, there's not a huge advantage, disadvantage. Like, even from the weather point of view, generally, your 300 two-strokes are really good when it's wet, really good when it's technical, tricky. But then when it's hard pack, they're not that great because a two-stroke can't put the traction down like a four-stroke can.
Just wringing its neck the whole time.
Yeah. But then it depends. When I first started, I was on 300 two-strokes, and a lot of two-strokes seem to be winning world championships. Then you go, when I was on the kind of bigger displacement four-strokes, kind of the E2 class seemed to be. The E2 class generally is the harder class. It's most people can't ride 250.
Or the most competitive.
Yes. Yeah. So that's where... if you look at the results of an overall, of a kind of weekend, you'd get, maybe of a top 10, you'd probably get 2 or 3 E1 riders. You'd probably get 6 E2 riders and then 1 or 2 E3 riders.
Oh, okay.
So the E2 is generally the toughest class, E3 is generally the easiest class. E1, you've usually got Garcia in it because he's a little lad and on arguably one of the best bikes in the whole kind of competition. Okay. But then he'd struggled to go on an E2 bike. He'd really struggled to go on an E3 bike. Same like Andrea Verona, was good on an E1 bike, really good on an E2 bike, but would struggle maybe on an E3 bike.
And you switch, right? You chop and change.
Yeah, so I switch. So, and that goes back to a little bit of kind of motivational point of view. So started on E3, 300 two-stroke, really good bike, won an awful lot on that bike. But I got to the point where I kind of wanted to try something different. And looking back, it's, you think, okay, not necessarily I got tired of winning or winning came easy, but I wanted to try something different. Maybe it would have been better to stay on something and keep winning.
Keep the money coming in.
Which would have been good. But yeah, so I changed to the four-stroke. At the time, the manufacturer I was riding for, the four-stroke, didn't have a great reputation.
When you were going to try and change that?
Yeah, so I wanted to try and change that and kind of help them out and do that, and which I did. Ended up being quite successful on that. And then the E1 class is the only class I haven't won. So that was the goal really for last year.
Okay.
So moving to Honda, they have a good 250 program, maybe not the fastest bike, but we gave that a good run, came up a little bit short. We really progressed with the bike in the later part of the season, but not quite enough, I don't think, in the first part of the season. Plus me adapting to the bike, it took a little bit of time.
Yeah, you've got to bed it in and how it responds to things.
Yeah.
But from an outsider coming into Enduro, which I did the last couple of years, like before, I've never even sat on a bike. I always tell people I've never even straddled one. I won't.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Oh, you'd love it." Like, I know that. Yeah, I already have enough hobbies that I don't do. I don't want to sit on a bike because I'll be on eBay that I'm looking for. All the E1, E2, E3 stuff, that was confusing to me as someone who didn't understand the sport. And I wonder if that's what's keeping Enduro quite small, is that people outside it don't know what's going on. So I'd ask someone, how'd you get on the weekend? They go, I won this class, I won that class, I was the first here, and I was overall third. And and there was kind of, if you ever watched a podium from after a competition day, it's about 60 podiums.
It is
and it seems like everyone's a winner, and there's little classes here or there. And it's hard to identify who's the best, but you have the overall. But then you could say, well, he was on this bike and I was on that bike. And
that's I think what's good about the Enduro GP class is it gives you like an overall.
Yeah, people know what they're watching.
I do think there are things they could do to make it a little bit simpler. I think as much as my number 70, say, and the number, like choosing your own number is good, and for your brand, but I don't think our sport's really big enough to warrant having a brand around a number.
They've just done that with downhill mountain biking. They have career numbers now.
Yeah. So, but we're not MotoGP and Enduro. I think it would help a lot if the top 10 were number ordered from the year before. I think that would help a lot, just to give spectators, because there is a lot of kind of enthusiasm around the sport, especially when you go to countries that it's really big in, like your Portugals, your
South America,
Italy, South America. It's big, although we haven't really been there recently. I've never raced outside of, well, I've been to Morocco and raced in Morocco, but outside of Europe, really. They kind of all finished that when I came into the Enduro GP Championship.
Right, so I think the sport is actually huge. The race scene is quite small.
Yeah.
but the amateur scene is enormous, and I think there's so much opportunity within it. Like, do you know Anthony Foligno?
No, I don't.
He's got a YouTube channel, Midwest MX.
Okay.
He's a local guy. I went to school with him.
Yeah.
But he's got 300,000 subscribers on a YouTube channel. He just goes out on the weekend with his mates, just videoing all crashing and falling off. And he's an average rider. That's kind of his brand. I'm an average rider. I'm just having a go.
Yeah.
But he's a full-time YouTuber.
Yeah.
And he makes decent money, and he gets bikes thrown at him, and he gets invited to conventions and to events. So he came to the 6 Days launch last year.
Okay.
Me, him, and Tilda walking around. But there's more to it than the race scene. And if you can bring in all these aspects, like you got a YouTube channel, you're a good racer, and you start doing podcast stuff, then I think the opportunity is out there, and people see sometimes I want to be a racer, but they don't want to take it as seriously as possible, and they don't think about starting a YouTube channel or anything like that, whereas there's so many people who do it in the world.
And I think, like, it's going back, because I got into watching YouTubers. There's an American guy called Colton Haker, and I think that was way back in like 2016, 2017. I got really into his vlogs. They were really good. I was like, I should do that. And I wasn't confident enough back then. Started them this year, but it is a hell of a lot of work.
Editing a video and trying to be present and filming things. And
I like trying to be open and
authentic.
Yeah, exactly. But, it's like, take the injury now. No way would I want to be on a camera for the first 4 weeks of this knee injury.
No, and no one wants to see you either.
No, exactly.
They don't care about you whining about your knee injury.
No, exactly.
They want actual stuff to watch.
Yeah.
And this, check out the channel. It's really funny, Midwest MX. But because he's got a microphone and he's commentating, and it's all just like cartwheeling down through the brambles and stuff. But he gets like death threats on a regular basis. Yeah. He posts on his Instagram the comments.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you die? I can't believe you've got a YouTube channel. Like, you're rubbish, you're shit. And he's like, I never said I'm just riding, and just vlogging it. Yeah, it's quite funny, actually.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's just a huge amount of opportunity out there in enduro. Like we said, the worldwide sales of a bike is enormous. There's so many hobbyists out there. And
I think it's the perfect crossover from, it's like a lot of the new brands coming into motocross now, like Ducati, Triumph. I think they've not necessarily missed a market, because I think they are going to go into enduro. But okay, motocross is big, don't get me wrong, but motocross is very fickle. If you don't come in straight away with a bike that people want, or is powerful enough, or don't have the right rider on it, people are not going to buy that bike because it's too slow. They're not going to get a good start. They've already talked their way out of it, I think. And especially brands like Ducati, Triumph, they're very on-road based brands at the moment, and enduro is perfect because there's so many different levels of enduro, so many different roads. If you've got an enduro bike, you can go on road, you can go gravel roads, you can
just adventure with your mates and stuff, right? It looks like such a laugh.
And I in the winter we always do trail rides. Me and my mates go off in the Welsh mountains on the byways, and it is a good crack.
And you pack lunch with you and stuff.
Exactly. And no, it's just especially like, I wish I could show everybody when we go racing in God knows where, in the middle of Italy, in the mountains, or in Portugal, and some of the views and stuff you see, and how you
can't get there in a car.
No way. And how close we are to nature, as corny as it sounds. Like, without nature we can't do our sport really. And so yes, you need to look after it and maintain it and all this such. But it's definitely a sport that you do see a lot of the world.
Yeah, it does look good. I would not have been a good racer. Back in my early 20s and stuff, if I was ever competing, I was just a bag of nerves, and I don't think I would have performed very well. And I know that the life of an athlete is unstable at best. You've got wins, losses, middle of the pack, then you've got now an injury. And I was a bit more of a steady Eddie in that respect. I don't think I could have, and I think a lot of people, they can't handle the swings of professional sport, and if you ask them actually, what do you want out of your life, I just want to ride my bike. And there's other ways you can do that. You don't have to be an athlete. And this knee injury, it, like we said earlier, it's just a part of it, isn't it? And we spoke on the phone after you'd injured yourself, and if a lot of professional athletes could have a year out, it would really benefit their longevity, I think. But you can't schedule a year out, because it usually happens organically through something like this. So there's actually a lot of plus points you can get from just coming back, not having your stress level so high for a year. And
no, exactly. And I've taken the opportunity now. Part of it, like you say, the highs and lows of sport, leading a Enduro GP day by 20 odd seconds, I was probably going to take, in that test, I took 10 out of everybody, like the top guys. God knows how much out the others, but
God knows how much out the others. Exactly. Yeah, they didn't see them.
Usually, like top 3 or 4 are usually quite a bit ahead of some of the other guys. But was on track to do the same because I felt like I was riding that test better the second lap. Just come up over this part of the hill, and so I got a friend, a couple of friends actually, that come to Enduro GPs and line spot for me. So, the team can't bring, 20 people to a race. So, I invest in bringing people that I trust to races to line spot for me. So
you employ them then? Do you bring them along and say, go out and find me the best lines?
And I remember the first test of that day. So usually riders go and walk out the Saturday night, have a little look-see, but you can't walk everything. So I went focused on the extreme test because the day before the Saturday, I lost the race on the last extreme test. Well, I say lost the race. I had a chance of winning. Second corner, there's a couple of little rock steps, and I hit one, got a little bit offline, but just, when you're nervous and you just you just do something.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have done it. Wheelied into this rock, bike flipped upside down, went the wrong way, upside down off a rock. Lost quite a bit of time there anyway, finished third that day. Went and walked the extreme test because it was like 40 odd minutes to walk. But Diogo, the guy that came with me to help, Portuguese guy, runs God knows how many kilometers during race days to look all these lines. He walked the whole enduro test for me. He must have sent me 18, 20 pictures. We were there in the camper in the night, like looking through where to go. So bearing in mind, since I've ridden the test the Saturday before, there's been another 120 riders through it. Then we come there after doing the other 2 tests during the day. So the enduro test lasted the lap. So I've gone into that test, God knows how many bikes have been through it. People have done lines. I've looked at 18 pictures of lines that he's walked that needs me to do. And I've hit every single one exactly how I should have. First lap took 10 seconds out of everyone. Because
it's a team sport in that respect, isn't it? Even though you're individually on a time trial, you have an entourage of people around you.
Yeah, you have to at this level. You have to have people there that are solely for you.
You can't just ride what's in front of you.
No. And I've been in teams where there's been one guy between 2 of us, and it's just not good. So the few £100 that you're going to spend to bring someone to the race is, the difference between me winning or not, and that's obviously a considerable amount of bonus money. But I remember coming around the second lap, doing the same lines. I was hitting everything perfect, and the one section where I injured my knee is few ruts coming up, you turn a bit tight on the top, and then there's one big rut, and I tried to cross it, but I didn't quite realise the angle of the rut, and I came in like a bit too acute to the rut, and tried to wheelie, spun up, literally just like 6 inches further to the left. I would have been absolutely fine. Just caught the rut, bike went one way, I went the other, put my leg out, bit uneven.
Yeah, there's a video of it, isn't there, which most people have probably seen.
Yeah, hyperextended my knee, snapped the ACL, damaged the meniscus, and that was my race done.
And it's only if you watched it frame by frame you'd know.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it just looks like your foot's been caught, but it's actually, if you saw a picture of it, it's probably completely hyperextended.
Yeah, and then it got drugged in the wheel a little bit as well.
And you went up and to the right, and you're obviously trying to take your weight off it. And
that's not good. And the track then went down around a left-hander, and I struggled with the front there, and I just, in that split second, I thought I don't want to go down there, tuck the front and put my leg out. So I just pulled off the track, gathered my thoughts, and then finished and quit the race. But
well, there's plenty of times where it's all paid off and you've won the race, isn't it? How do you handle it if you're in the lead and people are coming for you? How do you handle that, being the guy to beat? Because there's actually people out there hoping you'll do badly, which is a weird thought if you let it creep in. Because when you crash or come off, someone goes up the table slightly.
Yeah. I think.
Or do you just dismiss it and just ride?
I always view it a little bit as like, I'm certainly the first few years of my career, that I was kind of not the underdog, even though I was the one that was kind of winning the most. But I always went in thinking, this guy's better than me, and I need to chase after him.
The underdog mentality.
Whereas now I take the confidence from that. I really don't believe that there's anybody that can do what I can do on a bike. Like I say, there's people out there that I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the fastest guy out there. I'm not. But I feel in a championship and throughout a season, I am the best guy. I really do.
I agree. That. Like I said with that boy band reference, you're the guy at the front, not spinning around in a sequin jacket at the back.
And I feel I'm the most adaptable to conditions, the most adaptable to kind of like challenging bits through. I do think that obviously guys out there that are better in areas than I am.
But it's a long game, isn't it?
Yeah, but like I say, over a season and managing a season and being able to adapt to bikes, like I was mentioning about different classes, there's no one really that can do that, I don't think, in the championship at the moment.
No, I agree.
I think the guys that are out there at the moment are on the bikes that they can do the best on. I think if they move to a different manufacturer, I do not feel that they can be the same level as that.
And do you feel like you're still growing, still trying to find that top speed?
Yeah, I feel like I've been on very good bike even now with the Honda. It's a great bike, but I don't think it's the best bike in the championship. And I'm still able to compete against guys that are on the best bike that are racing. So I do feel I'm an adaptable rider, and like I say, good at kind of making decisions. And I think ultimately, as you get higher,
make it work.
Yeah. And
do you study other riders, their technique?
I don't. If I'm being honest, I know a lot of people have personally said to me they study me. A lot of top riders, at least.
Well, you're known as one of the cleanest guys, though. The slickest technique, and you look like it's easy for you, and some people are just hanging off the thing and they're just wringing its neck the whole time, and their engine's revving and their wheels are spinning, they're not going anywhere.
No, and I never I don't want to sit here and blow smoke up my own
just do it.
I don't feel like I can get anything from anyone else. I think, and as bad as that might sound, it's I know where the other guys are better than me, but it's areas that I don't really want to go into. I think your Garcias, your Brads, they're ridiculously fast, but you just have to look at the crashes.
You have your style.
Yeah. And
no, I agree. There's so much information out there that you could take on board. It might just confuse things. So in my world, I have a nutrition strategy that I know works for me. I'm 41. I'm the strongest I've ever been, the leanest I've ever been. But if I looked at every sports scientist's nutrition plan, I'd be like, oh, is that actually going to make me better or worse? And then you can get bombarded with information. You just don't need that. I think you find something that works for you, and you know how you're progressing. And if you're going backwards, you know that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Has there been anything where you thought, within the last couple of years, where you thought like, how the hell did I not know that? And you've kind of gone, how the hell have I got through my entire career without knowing that?
No, not really. I think through my career, then you definitely learn different things. I'd say, kind of outside of the riding point of view, more of like the team and the professionalism, and maybe being too emotionally connected to people. Not necessarily in a bad way. Like, I mean, more. No,
I get it.
Yeah,
I get
it's
it.
like,
if you change teams, then the team you just spent 5 years with, now you're like, thanks for everything. But
exactly, and like I say, the first few careers during the beat of the manufacturer that I rode for the longest, 8 years. And then, you think of what you go through with them, you have a plan, and this is the whole thing about like career planning, and you think potentially I'm going to stay there for the rest of my career.
You make genuine friendships.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and even my mechanic there, best mechanic I ever had, we both went into the team at the same time, kind of grew up together, and and then they decide they don't want you, and you're out the door. And
you're an employee at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and a lot of these, if the teams have vlogs and stuff, and I see it in other sports, we're like a family, we're on the road, and then suddenly like, next year, by the way, it's not working out this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, literally, and I do like the family atmosphere about it, and it was like that with Honda and the teams you go to, and but ultimately, if you're not performing or you have injuries, and dynamics change, and you do realize that's where I think having a support team, close-knit people around you that are not based on where you're racing, they're based on you as an athlete.
Yeah. So you took your mechanic with you, did you? No,
I didn't with my mechanic, just because of where teams are based.
Okay.
Which was difficult, but
because I know when you do well, you reward your entourage as well. You bought your mechanic a nice watch and stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And and it's, I think it's just paying back. Like, mechanics aren't the most highest paid people out there. Obviously, us riders make a decent amount more money than they do, and I think it's just important to reward people. That
of course it is. Yeah, be known for that guy.
Yeah.
And I, next year, hopefully when you come back from this and win the World Championships, I'm really looking forward to just whatever gift I can get.
Exactly,
and Dave as well, being the camera's probably looking forward to his gift, what he's going to get there.
Everyone. So,
but yeah, we met at the 6 Days, didn't we?
Yeah.
And then after that, we kind of decided to put a winter together of some strength conditioning stuff. You haven't really done much of that before, have you? Just a little bit?
No, so I did do strength work, but never, I was a kind of like a, you have your 6 to 8, different kind of
workout that work out for you.
Or even kind of like little and you just kind of do that throughout the whole year. So it's never.
Well, that's
structured.
all right, but sometimes it's nice to get a fresh view on things.
Yeah, it is. But then you look at what I was able to achieve doing that, and how much better and more beneficial what we've been doing together is, and it makes you kind of think, well, if I'd done that at the beginning, where would I have been? So I know what you mean, but again, that's hindsight, isn't it? Yeah, it is. But that's what I think one of the biggest things about coming into this year, and the confidence, and going back to what you were saying about controlling what you can control. I think confidence, self-belief, that all comes from going to that start line, knowing you've done everything. Yeah,
we knew in March and April you were physically superior than you were the year before, because we measured it, right? You were bench pressing more, you lifted more weight, you're moving things quicker, so we know that. Yeah. And then you can take that psychology of momentum forward. Yeah. And it's just totally by chance that I was as the performance coach for the ISDE last year, because Jamie Lewis, the manager, he reached out to me on Instagram, just like we were talking about earlier. I said I've never sat on a motorbike because I just don't want to have a new hobby. He reached out to me on Instagram and said, it seems like a decent thing to reply to. I'm the coach, the manager for the International Six Days Enduro. Do you want to have a meeting and potentially come along as a performance coach? And the weird thing is that I've trained a few endurance guys before and people across different classes. And I said to my wife, Rowan, I said, I'm probably going to just come away from the enduro scene. I'm, got a few clients not really that interested in it. It couldn't have been more than 20 minutes later, Jamie sent me that message. And I kind of believe in fate like this as well. You said you were free. And about an hour later, I saw Shorebreak Sounds advertisement. And I thought, So we met with Jamie. We got on real well. And he's like, do you want to come? I said, yeah, cool. And from that trip, I've made a load of new mates, had great experiences, met yourself. And then when did we meet up? Was it late November, December?
Yes, it was. Yeah,
we went to the Pure Gym in Cardiff, which was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah,
when I booked it online, I thought, it's going to be one of these, city gyms, but it was equipped and it was clean, and it was cool. And I had to do the workout with you because they're quite funny on coaching. Exactly. So if you're in there coaching someone, they call you up on it. So I had to do the workout, and then we went to Nando's. You made me eat that chicken.
Yeah, was it the Fanta edition one?
It was nice, really but nice. And we. Fanta chicken. Really it was good. Yeah. And I said, I'll have that as well. And I remember we wrote out a winter. We were there for probably over an hour based on who you are, what you wanted, your timeline, real nice, clean winter. And I thought, okay, that's going to work. We both agreed. Yeah. And then I remember towards the end, I said, and I don't expect you to be in a calorie deficit at any point during this. I just laughed at performance. I don't care what you weigh on the scales. And you said, well, I wouldn't mind losing 5 or 6 kilos. I said, all right, just chuck that in at the end. I remember thinking like, okay, does that affect the program at all? And I thought, well, no, it doesn't affect what we do, but it'll affect the outcome somewhat. I said, well, let's put a deadline on this. And you got 6 weeks to lose as much weight as you can. And you said, well, tomorrow I'm going to Japan for an all-inclusive 2-week trip. So, okay. And
it's a little bit. You're like, right, by this date, this is where you need to be really strict. After that, just well, I forgot to tell you about this Japan all-inclusive 2-week trip with my girlfriend. Okay, cool. Well, we'll see what happens. I think that is one thing that I've never been a skinny lad. I've never worked ridiculously hard to be skinny, but I've never felt it's really impacted me too much.
And when I said I don't care about your scales, I actually mean it. I don't care about the body composition. You shredded. In fact, being shredded is going to be against you. If anything, in an endurance sport, you need the extra reserves under the skin.
No, exactly. And I think especially like with the 6 days, I think that kind of helps for that. But it's definitely something every year I'm like, I need to trim up a little bit, but.
Yeah, it's not going to affect your performance. Getting a bit more weight in your hand and pushing that's going to be the big thing. And if you're in a calorie deficit during a training camp, you are going to get different results. And I wasn't worried about that, but I don't know how it worked out in the end. Did you?
I think I got down 2 kilos.
Because you were about 83 kilos.
Yeah, I was definitely less than that. Yeah. So I got down to, I think, 78 maybe. So it was a bit. And then, operation and stuff happened. I think I got up to like 82. I think I'm hovering 80, 79 at the minute.
Because that's another thing about, about the professionalism, about the preparation, about how you conduct yourself in these things. On the 6 days, I remember on the first day of competition, I weighed everyone at the start of the day. And then I weighed everyone at the end of the day. I want to see how much fluid they'd lost through sweat. And there was a mean average of 1.8 kilos per athlete. And that's a fair amount, right? That's nearly 2 litres of fluid. Yeah. You were exactly the same weight at the end of the day as you were at the start. I think you were like 83.1 or something. Yeah. Exactly. And everyone else lost 2 kilos. And again, I thought, it's just another aspect where Steve doesn't really make mistakes, doesn't leave things to chance. No. And after the track walks in the evening, whatever it was, even after the race day, everyone would be downstairs after food, mingling. Some people have a beer. And I don't hold that against him. If I was competing, I would have a beer. Yeah. But you just slither off. Yeah. You wouldn't say anything.
Go back, put my little boots on.
Yeah, you put your compression boots on, and you sit up in the room on your own. And again, that's just another level that the other guys weren't going to. And again, I'm not saying what they should do. I'm just saying what was happening.
Yeah.
And it's just a testament to, you really do take it seriously when you have to, and you're the ultimate professional.
Yeah, no, and like you say, I like a beer as much as the next guy, don't get me wrong. And there's
on the last night, you were in the air. Yeah, I remember.
Exactly. I didn't go too mad. A few years ago, I probably would have gone a bit too much.
That was the last time I was pissed. Yeah, that was the last time I was drunk. It was in October.
Same, actually.
Yeah. And I remember we were in a hotel. It was out of town.
Yeah.
So the town was about a half an hour taxi ride away. And I remember coming back at about 5. We ought to meet downstairs at 7:30 to drive to the airport. And Tilde appeared in my door because I had something of hers, and she was just like, "Oh my god!" And like, everyone was just hanging. And I remember I had to drive to the airport, and everyone in the back was just sleeping. It was hell. And I'm quite happy. I'd be happy never to be hungover ever again.
No, especially after that. And it's probably the worst thing to do after 2 weeks of hard
dehydration and stress. Yeah,
and I remember I was a little bit ill going into the last motocross, and then after drinking as well, I was writ off for about a week probably after that.
Yeah, it hits me for a week now.
Yeah.
It's, and I really enjoy every day. I'm down the beach, I'm surfing, I'm mountain biking and stuff. I just want.
Yeah.
And even in my 20s, I was never, if there was an occasion, I'm the ultimate boozer. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I was never just a Friday out, Saturday out, Sunday hungover kind of guy.
No. And I've had the odd, I do like red wine as well. And I've had the odd time where I remember last year I had a pretty tough race, Romania. And nothing was going right. I was a little bit off with the bike. I was generally off as well. And I remember getting home after that. And I was like, I fancy a glass of wine. So I just, poured a glass.
On your own?
Yeah, on my own, sat home after dinner. And then add another one. Like, I can control my drinking. Yeah. I'm not like an alcoholic or anything. And then I was just drinking that. It's really nice wine. And I just remember I just had the whole bottle. Just went to sleep, woke up, and then didn't touch a drink then for another 6 months.
Yeah, then went to bed.
Yeah, exactly.
Went to bed on your own.
And I managed to go up the stairs. And no, but it's just, I think there's a time and a place, isn't there? And like I always try not to have a drink 2 weeks before a race.
Yeah,
I think that's really a really critical time for an athlete to not do anything.
Yeah, agreed. I know the motorsport guys are like that as well. They need to be on and sharp.
Yeah, and ultimately it's my job, my career. I want to win, and that. As nice as having a beer is, it's it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, you don't see the risk return on it.
No, and performance wise, it's definitely something you shouldn't really do and shouldn't really do at the wrong time. So, like I say,
yeah, absolutely. And going back to your injury again, you raced one of the major races. And was it the first GP you did?
Yeah, first GP.
Yeah, then you're out for the season.
Yeah.
So like we were talking about earlier, you're established. You're one of the main guys. If you're a young athlete coming up on a 1 or 2 year contract, that would be panic stations, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And then there's the pressure of coming back too early, and it was a pretty...
That's what I think people do. You can't really speed up the recovery time of the soft tissue that much.
No.
But they try and come back early, and then the story, they get themselves in trouble.
And I've never, and same like the ACL. Yeah, you can function without an ACL. I know God knows how many people that have done it, and and that's where the difference between teams and athletes get pressured by teams to compete with injuries, come back too early after injuries, and I think that's where you need to be. I've always had the kind of outlook of what I'm going to be in 20-30 years time.
Long-term
this
approach.
is important, this is where I make the majority of my money in my lifetime, but equally I've got a life after racing, hopefully, and like the ACL, it's yes, there's crazy stories, people coming back after 3 months, 4 months, whatever,
and it might go well for them.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be fine.
Exactly, but I've never. Why
would you take that chance?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like you can use your established rider status as leverage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've never heard someone say that they've come back too early at an ACL, for example. Someone say that they've come back too early after an ACL and their knee's fine. They always have pain. I might have pain even if I come back after 6 months, but I think that's where I need to.
Even if it means 20 years away.
Yeah, exactly.
You might be into something, you might be into skiing or something, and then your knee is killing you because you've now got arthritis there.
Exactly, because you pushed through it and you've done this when you were young, and you might have got, that extra 10, 20, 30, 40 grand, whatever it is, competing, getting these results, doing that. But, is that really worth your long-term health? And I think that's where you have the responsibility of an athlete, of, a human being, to do what's right for you. If I know full well that I would not have been able to compete at the same level if I didn't have my ACL. Yeah, I can build the muscle up, I can do what I want, but you know, what happens if it goes, you know, I slowly come back through the year, first race next year or pre-season training camp, put my leg on the floor, you know, swell up again, and then I've wasted 2 years.
So if it was later in the year and you were number one and you had one race to go, you might risk it. Yeah, because I remember you text me saying, "This is what's happened. This is what I think. What do you reckon?" And I said, "Operation ASAP."
Yeah. And everybody that I respect their decision of, and you know, I have this saying. It's like, it's not the exact saying, but I'd never take advice from someone that, you know, I
you don't respect, you don't want to learn from it. Yeah,
you know, so everybody that I'd spoken to that I value their opinion and their thoughts all said get the operation.
Yeah.
So when I've got my whole team of people that are telling me to do that and have my best interests at heart, why am I going to do something else?
But if you were a 21-year-old, I might have gone, do you know what, maybe the next type of race is your type of track. Maybe you try and put a result in there. You might have given different advice. It wouldn't be a blanket advice. It would have been, think about through what you said. Who is he? What can he achieve? Time
frames. Yeah. You know, I had 18 days until my next race. I had a pretty bad edema, like bone bruise on my femur where my tibia had hit it. So that was going to be the limiting factor of trying to race after as well. And
because the knee brace could have done a lot of the work of the major ligaments.
Yeah, it did. I was very fortunate to have my knee braces on. I've been with Pod, the knee braces I ride for God knows how many years. You know, really trust them. I think I would have completely ripped my knee apart if I didn't have them on. But you know, you can't stop everything.
No,
really, and especially a hyperextension. And it was just an awkward thing. But I think that's where, you know, having good partners and kind of doing what was best for me. And the two options were, you know, 3 months without an ACL to rehab to get back going, or 6 months and have the operation. And I didn't see the point of wasting 3 months.
Forget the season this year and just look at next year.
Exactly.
Because I remember years ago, Elvin, the rally driver, when he was on Ford, his career was kind of in the air. He was on the bubble, you know, finishing 4th and 5th, never really podium and winning anything. And he had a massive compression in a rally car, compressed to the vertebrae in his spine in between his shoulder blade and his shoulder blades. They weren't broken and it was quite stable, but it was painful. He didn't need an operation. And he had to have time out the car though. And at that time he was like, I could do without having time out the car, but he had to. And Ford, having paid for the car to travel, were just like, we're just going to stick another driver in this car then if you're not available. And it's, you know, panic stations then. Because if this other driver had done really well, suddenly he's out of a job. Luckily this guy went through the hedge, I think, on his first rally. A couple of weeks later, Elvin is back in the car. But it's, like I said before, you know, the life of an athlete is unstable and some people can't handle the swings.
No,
and it is scary.
And I think you're only ever 2 years away from retirement, really.
And what does life after riding look like for you? What do you think?
It's changed a little bit recently with Francesco and being to Italy. I think the chances of potentially doing something within the within enduro, within the sport, are higher.
Because it's bigger out there than it is in the UK.
Yeah, and they're a lot more passionate. Most of the manufacturers, and especially in enduro, pretty much all the teams are in Italy, bar a few.
The Italian national championship is as big as the GP nearly, isn't it? It's the biggest national champs there are.
You know, from a financial point of view, we make decent money, but we don't make enough that I can not do anything when I stop racing. We can go maybe a little bit longer in enduro than you can say in a sport like motocross. I think we can go 35, 36, 37 maybe.
I don't know if you're in the next wave or not, but I think they're going to be going into the early 40s from now on. If you take your time, look after your body with the speed of the technology of medicine and operations. Something that was a career ender 10 years ago is nothing now.
No, exactly.
You got a shattered femur, they put a bolt in it, you're on your feet the next day.
And I think you see that especially in the sport of motocross in America. A lot of the guys now are kind of early 30s, all got families. I think that's helped them kind of, you know, whereas a lot of guys were retiring 26, 27, then having families. And I think, you know, that's obviously all to come later in life. But I do feel our sport's a little bit different in that it is a lot on the athlete, but it's also a little bit less demanding.
It's a bit safer.
And it's a lot more about technique and kind of how you dissect tracks. Like, there are a few young kids coming up, but then equally when I look at their age and where I was at their age, I would have been beating myself at their age, if you know what I mean. So they are maybe a little bit behind where
do you think the next generation is slightly slower then?
I think so. There are some really good, promising kids coming up, but I don't see that people want it as much. You know? And I think that's changed quite a bit with technology, social media. People kind of seem to race because all their mates are racing, which okay, that's great at an amateur level, but if you really want to do something with your career, you need to, you need to invest some time and prioritize some things. And I don't think people want to try and do everything and, go out with their mates on weekends. And
you've got to sacrifice something.
Exactly.
But if you look across all sports, literally every sport, there's a huge drop-off rate at about 15 or 16 years old that falls off a cliff. Girls, things, you get distracted, other things. And also I think it's sometimes they don't want to race. They're just doing it because their dad is taking them every weekend. And now they start to maybe even resent their parents' ideas, right? Like, actually, I don't want to race. You're dragging me here. I've had enough. But and then I think when you get to that age, you're going to have to decide: am I going to go head first into this, or am I going to? And then some people will go to college and do a bricklaying course and think they have that as their safety net. Then, but if you've got too big a safety net, you're probably not going to have the guts to go forward. You need to have you need to be all in. And I think there is. I speak to so many of these young kids and parents, and the parents are always like, he's got talent, he's got speed, and I kind of tell him, is he all into it? He's got to bring it, in every aspect, just really be there.
And I think especially at that age, you need to kind of in a way make that decision to do it, but they're still probably 3 or 4 years off of getting it, or making it. So and all it takes is one little setback in that 4-year period that's going to throw a spanner in the works and make it 5 years or 6 years. So it is a long-term thing, and you think, the amount of riders that there are in the UK, or I grew up racing with, and, there's probably 5 or 6 professional riders in the UK. Probably maybe
so the chances, if you look percentage-wise.
It's ridiculous.
It's the same in America when you look at people who want to be an NFL player. You see the cuts that are made to get that person in. It's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible.
But then equally, if I've done it, there's no reason why anyone else can't.
And even if they go all in at age 16 and they give it 10 years, they're still only 26. They can discover, okay, I'm not going to make this. You've still got so much time. And all that skill and dedication and focus you had for the last 10 years, you can now borrow that and go into something else, starting a business or doing something new. So it's not all lost, it's not do or die. It's not all or nothing. And I can't think of a better thing for young kids to do rather than be going, because otherwise, there's girls or drugs and things all start all this massive time in your life where you could go a completely opposite direction can kind of come for you. Show and tell, Steve, what have you got for us?
So I've got a broken handlebar.
Why is that significant? Why do you still have it?
So I still have it. It was so a lot of my personal stuff's in Italy at the minute, so I didn't have too much back at home, but it's more the story behind it. So, and it kind of goes into a few different, so it's not ragging on obviously the maker of this bar, because I hadn't had any issues with
it's done its time.
And it's very unique, the crash.
Thank you for your service, little bar.
So this was in 2020, so obviously COVID season, normal championship got reduced to 4 rounds. It was France, Italy, and then 2 back-to-back races in Portugal. And this bar broke or snapped.
At the clamp as well, not by the grip.
Yeah, at the clamp. My last training session before the last 2 races in Portugal back-to-back. So, and it broke because I crashed. It didn't break on its own.
Oh, okay. So
it's not a bar fault. So I remember but the story behind it. So last training session, pissing down with rain at home, riding with my mate Alex, and we were riding a track real close to home, motocross track, just putting in the time, doing last ride. Always, I really don't like the last week before in like a championship.
You're on a knife edge.
So I'm always just try and ride as lit as I can, really focus, really making sure I don't crash.
I get it.
So, and it's like the sigh of relief when you finish that training session is undescribable. And fortunately, I've had a few of them, and it's never got easier. Anyway, this was probably like the second 20-minute moto we were doing, and there's uphill jump. It's a bit sketchy anyway, because the track doesn't get graded too much. And I remember doing the moto with Alex, and he was gaining on me a little bit, and we weren't jumping this jump.
I'm not having that, you thought?
A little bit. And I'd done it like 3 or 4 times, and pulled a bit of a gap, and I was like, this is ideal. And I come out the corner, a little bit of a twitch, and I was like, I should back out really. And I didn't, and I caught the top, but it wasn't like an end over end. It was quite a funny crash. So I caught the top, like panic rev, started to endo. So when you give gas on a motorbike, it kind of brings the front end up. So as I've
you're in the air.
So when I'm in the air, so I've caught the lip, gone onto the front wheel, kind of started to go off track, dropped back on the rear, but I'm still flat out. Obviously it's wet, so I've hit the ground, looped. So I'm
did a backflip
flat out now, let go of the bike. Bike's cartwheeled like 30 meters, handlebar went in the ground, snapped that. But it's throttle side, and we have electric start. So obviously picked the bike up. My mate stopped, checked his bike. Okay, he finished his moto and come back. I was trying to figure out how to do it. Anyway, he's gone back to the van to get the tool to be able to put it back in the handlebar. He's crashed on the way back because it slipped. Anyway, we've done it, figured it out. Didn't have the electric start, so managed to put the handlebar in the clamp. Managed to bump start it, ride back, and that was my last training session before going to Portugal.
And you remember now, just don't do anything stupid on race week.
Yeah, exactly. And we obviously have training area on the Thursday to ride our race bikes before, and I remember just it's that kind of, once you start the race, it's okay, because if you crash or damage someone in the race, it's part of it. But
yeah, that's part of it.
That training session, usually the last one before the race, is not the most stress-free environment.
No. Right, we got some questions from Instagram on my appeal the other day.
Perfect.
We had loads.
I'm glad we had a few.
Yeah, there was loads, but I had to pick sort of 5 or 6 or 7. We'll do a kind of quick fire as well, right? Don't don't drag this out. Be quite succinct with it. After your first World Championship win, how do you mentally prepare for the next one, or were you just on? Were you like, I want more?
Yeah, that was me. I always had a plan of winning 3 and going to America, but that didn't happen.
What, more money out there?
I think there was at the time. I don't know if it is now, but just I really like that format of racing. So they do 3-hour cross-country racing. But I'd say the problem came like for Championship 4. After that, I started to lose a bit.
God, is that where you sent me that heart rate, that Garmin?
Yeah.
You showed me the heart rate data from one of your Garmins on one of those races.
America, yeah, that was...
It was 2 hours, average 191 beats per minute.
Ridiculous.
And a 209 peak. Average!
Yeah.
191 for 2 hours.
I did blow up though.
Average.
I didn't last that long.
Yeah, right.
No, that was in the 32 degree Florida heat.
My peak is 191 I hit recently, and I had to go home.
Yeah.
I was in the gym. Cool. So you were after it after that first one. You just wanted it.
Yeah.
How do you balance it all? Life, social life?
Sacrifices.
Yeah. Choosing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can't balance it, maybe.
No, and like even for example, like birthdays and stuff, it's birthdays are time to go with friends and family and have some drinks, and birthdays always fall on race days. So it's only until like the last 2 years where I've actually had like been out and done something for my birthday. I'm not that kind of guy anyway, but
I always think it's a bit embarrassing when men celebrate their birthdays, and they're like, oh, it's my birthday. Like,
yeah, exactly.
All right.
And but it's definitely give and take. If you want to do something that nobody else has done, you've got to give up what people don't want to give up.
I like that. Weirdest fan moment?
Crikey.
Well, they're pretty good.
I haven't had too many weird ones, to be honest.
Answer the question, Steve. There's got to be something in there.
No, I haven't.
Just like stalked you or followed you or turned up in the petrol station?
No, not that. No, I honestly haven't had any weird fan moments.
Okay, then we'll scrap that one. Pre-race breakfast?
That's a tricky one because that develops a little bit. I'd say routinely, carbs. I try and double carbs, so porridge or cereal, or bread and eggs, pretty much. So carbs, protein, bit of fat maybe, and make sure I hydrate as well. Yeah,
predominantly carbs, isn't it? That's your body's preferred energy source, and you're a caffeine guy.
Yeah, caffeine guy. So always make sure I have my espresso before. Try and have 300-400 milligrams a day. Do
you? When's the last?
Last is usually
2.
Yeah, so I usually have one 8:30 before we start, and then 12:30, and that's me done.
Because caffeine abuse can really do you over on a race day, especially if it affects your sleep that night on a multi-day event. You're done. And it's actually where I think that new tonic stuff, I would prefer something like that. Doesn't hit you like a sledgehammer. It's more gradual.
That's good.
I'm not advertising this new tonic stuff, but I just really like it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Post race?
Depends which day. So Saturday's obviously really constructive to making sure I fuel for the next day. So I usually try and prepare like a rice or chicken and broccoli like in a little pot. Try and eat that as soon as I can. Do have like cherry juice, concentrated cherry juice.
Oh yeah, there's like 2,000 cherries in that drink.
Yeah, it is. It's ridiculous. Then like a protein carb replacement drink as well, and then
pretty standard stuff really.
Eat again in the evening, and then maybe a little snack before bed. But I do say after a Sunday, and because our races are quite long, I'm pretty writ off my stomach. I can eat. Yeah, I really struggle to eat on the Sunday.
Because I know some people on these Sunday enduro events, they're down McDonald's after that first day.
Yeah.
Now, from someone who knows about that type of stuff, it's not your worst choice.
No,
because it's the only time you can get 2,500 calories in 20 minutes. So if you're in a deficit, yes, but on a really long time scale, if you're having McDonald's on the week up to it every night, the oils and stuff they cook in are going to slow you down.
Yeah.
So maybe from time to time. And if you're in Europe, you see a McDonald's logo, you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Right. And if you go into a local cafe, sometimes you don't know, and you've got to worry about your stomach and be on these race days. Have you ever made a mistake that's haunted you?
When I changed from...
Not the handlebar.
No, not the handlebar. I wouldn't say haunted me, but it's definitely, maybe looking back, I wouldn't have done it, hindsight. But yeah, going on to the 4-stroke in 2020. Although I did have some success on it, it was definitely a lot harder to get that success on. But then equally, I think if I stayed on the 2-stroke, I don't think I would still be racing now.
Well, you live, you learn, don't you?
Yeah, it's definitely made my career a little bit longer.
Have you ever, and I don't just mean after a shit day, have you ever seriously considered walking away?
Yeah.
And thought, I'm done?
Yeah, it's always like, and like you said about having a backup plan, my backup plan was, I like traveling. I've been to New Zealand a few times. And my plan was if I ever never achieved it, or, got, just didn't make it, basically, I would just go backpacking in New Zealand for a bit and figure out what I wanted to do. But as far as like packing it in, probably 2022 is tricky because I was struggling with the bike, and, I know athletes like to blame things, but I was really not in a good place with the bike, and I feel like a couple of my crashes were kind of caused by a few parts on the bike that weren't up to kind of standard, and I'd really tried for multiple years to change things, and everybody, it's fine, and anyway, I had a crash, ruined my season on that first race when I was riding really well, and that's it. That year I was pretty much just done mentally. I had kind of the worst races of my career, like finishing outside the top 20, which is not normal.
Oh shit! What pulled you back in then?
I guess just we finally
bit of downtime, is it, to reflect?
And we finally changed some of the parts I was struggling with, which made the bike, in my eyes, a lot safer and a lot, because we have to push, and when things aren't up to scratch, and when you're having crashes that you just don't know what's happened, that's not a good place to be as an athlete. So, and then I managed to bounce back the year after getting shoulder surgery from that crash, over that winter, reset, came back and won 2023. So, I think that kind of bounce back was
cool. Last one, what engine size is best for the GP? You kind of talked about it earlier.
It really depends. Like, if you 2-stroke and 4-stroke, 300 2-strokes, the best of the 2-strokes.
Yeah.
A lot of the bikes are now like fuel injected, which, I've never really ridden a fuel injected 2-stroke, so I'd say maybe carb based, although the fuel injection is coming really good now. Then
that's carburetor, not carbohydrate.
Yeah. Then for 4-stroke, I'd say like a 300 350 cc. Much like the 300 Honda that I'm on, or some of the manufacturers make 350s. I think for what we need for a bike, then that's kind of the best capacity.
Yeah, okay. So as a final thought to all this, because my brand is called Athlete Development, and that goes further than physical preparation. Like we opened the podcast with, as a young racer, the final thought really is to get your shit together, be prepared, be willing to sacrifice, kind of go all in,
and I'd
control the controllables.
And I'd say, there's definitely some bits of kit to like invest in, not massive amounts of money, but the amount of people that don't wear like heart rate straps or Garmin's or don't track their streak.
I really like to collect data. It tells you more than just feel.
I do. And, if I could give 3 pointers, I would say, definitely invest a little bit more in yourself. Unfortunately that comes with a financial cost of, buying a watch, buying a heart rate monitor, buying apps to track stuff. Have
a strength conditioning coach,
maybe.
Exactly. Because you've got enough to think about as it is without having to plan a workout too. Just you can start to build a team.
And even like bicycles, but then you can equally buy a pair of running shoes and do most of your training on run. Treadmills in gyms, bicycles in gyms. I'd say definitely prepare better. And plan. That's one big thing as well. You'd be amazed how many people, top enduro GP riders, go to a track on a day and don't know what they're going to do that day. I like to be very planned. It's one of the hard things of this injury. I remember the first couple of days after, I just went on my calendar and wiped everything out that I'd planned for the next 6 months, which is not the best, but that's how far ahead I'm planned.
Like we highlight it all. Control Alt Delete.
Exactly. And like we said about when we met up the end of last year, and I tried to in December, January pretty much plan roughly day to day what I'm going to do from January until the end of the season. Yes, things change around, places change and things, but organised, planned, and then control the things you can control.
But it's hard now that you have to wipe all that plan away.
Yeah.
Because if you look at, we spoke about what does life look like for you after competition, the retired athlete depression rates are really high.
Yeah.
Because you've lived this life where you're constantly got 1 week, then you've got competition, then you're doing this, then you're traveling, then you're testing. And when they suddenly retire, they're now very similar to post-military people. They're the same. They're now missionless and don't really have anything to do. Yeah. So it's important, I think, that people going through their athletic career actually spend some time thinking about what does life after riding look like. Because you can start a business, for example, in anything. You can have your the Holcombe race team, whatever it is you might want to start.
That's a good name, that.
I'll buy that name. Yeah, right. And you don't age out of business, but you will age out of being an athlete. Yeah. There's a stopwatch on it, but you don't age out of business or a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever else you want to do. So.
Yeah. So
cool.
Yeah.
Steve Holcombe, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.